Thank you all so much for joining my session. I'm honored to be here today with all the other presenters that have spoken today, and I'm hoping that I will be able to also share some skills that you'll be able to utilize in your work or outside of your work and just in your community as a whole. Feel free, I will encourage you all to use the chat box at sometimes. If you do have questions, if you can try to save them until the end, that would be wonderful. I'll also put my contact information up at the end in case you do have questions. But otherwise, if you just don't want to lose your place and you would like to put it into the comment section, that's fine. So here we go. Let's see, there we go. All right, so just an overall view of the things we're going to go over. You will meet myself. We'll go over the goals of the workshops, the things that I'm hoping that you'll get from this presentation. We will have a breakout room, which is why I needed your favorite animal, because we do need that for an exercise. We will go over telling a story, different parts of a story, authenticity and why that's important in regards to storytelling, ways to build public speaking skills, recognizing your go-to moves, which is not exactly what it sounds like, what the audience doesn't know, using passions to tell a story, building a passionate elevator speech, which we will talk about elevator speeches a couple times, engaging with your communities, and then finally, what makes you come alive. So with that, a little bit about myself. So I am Katie Hickman. I graduated from the University of New Hampshire with a bachelor's degree in theater education, emphasis in youth drama and special ed. I was honored to be a part of the Union Leaders Class of 40 Under 40 for 2021. I am one of the founders and the education director for Queen City Improv, which is a Manchester-based improv troupe. I am the social media and community outreach coordinator for Boys and Girls Clubs of Central New Hampshire. And I also go by the stage name, pseudonym Katie Hickman Theater, primarily in the pandemic when I was converting to teaching online to reach kids who were at home during the pandemic. Was primarily when I was doing that. A lot of my background has been heavily affected and changed through the pandemic, especially, as much as we don't like talking about 2020. It's relevant information because I have done and have always been a person who's very involved in different ways in the community. And when the pandemic started in 2020, a lot of what I did completely changed, including no longer teaching in person to children, no longer running races with people, no longer performing. So a lot of that really paused me and forced me to come up with different ways of engaging with people. And something you'll notice, I think I say this on a later slide, but something you'll notice through my photos is this is kind of how I have really have started utilizing photos to tell a story. A good example is that running one is directly in April of the pandemic. Millennium Running had started putting on virtual races. So we were all running the same race on the same day from our own neighborhoods. And the union leaders saw me in the street and asked me to take a photo of myself with my mask and a Snow White dress, which is not my preferred method of running, but that was a great way. And I had lots of people reach out and start talking to me about my running and how could they start running in the pandemic. And that every picture pretty much that I put into this presentation tells a story about one thing or another, something I was doing at some point that was relevant that I was trying to convey to other people. And a lot of that came from out of necessity from the pandemic. So the general goals of the workshop would be talking about how to build a story, what it means to be a storyteller, different parts of a story, the skill of sharing information, using your passions in order to tell a story, and also telling stories to engage folks about the things you like. So there are different ways to do a presentation. In my mind, there can be a presentation that's built more informationally, where you're being given facts and you're going to receive those facts as is. This is going to be a presentation that's more open-ended, because my goal, knowing that a lot of folks joining today have a variety of backgrounds, maybe you are very comfortable public speaking and talking to others, maybe you're very new to it, you just want to learn. The goal is for everyone to have takeaways. So rather than presenting information that is only going to be perceived one way, it's going to be very open-ended. And I would love for people to have different takeaways at the end, different tools or different things that have prompted them to consider something else or their next steps in what they want to learn, and how to become a better storyteller. Like I said, I already mentioned how I utilize photos a lot to tell a story, and to connect them to the information I'm trying to share. So your first prompt for the chat, feel free to take a guess as to why this is the photo that I thought needed to be utilized for going over goals of the workshop. And it's funny because I don't have very many things that are football themed, but now we've somehow said it twice, and that wasn't on purpose. But I did specifically pick this picture in sharing this information about talking about goals. It's not boring. I love to hear that. I did try to do that to show us how exciting it will look like when we hit our goals. Completing a goal and triumph. Thank you so much. Any response along those lines was the gist of what I was trying to get. This photo specifically was, I was encouraged perhaps to take a photo that could be utilized in the future by Millennium Running, but also it was a milestone race for me. I'm not the fastest, but I do my best, and that's important to me. And so to convey that to people and to show them that I still have fun and I'm happy regardless, this was the photo that I took. But yeah, it was goal related. Those are not goal posts, but kind of setting a goal. And in the literal sense, it was completing the race. So thank you for all your thoughts. You were all right on track. So I'm glad it came across. So I'm going to give you more information specifically after you do your breakout room. In this first breakout room, I would like you to talk to us about your favorite animal. I'd like to know some facts about this animal. And I would like to know why you feel like people should care about this animal. And then, of course, the most important thing we're learning, visuals are very important. So I'm going to need you to just give us a sample, a little drawing, you know. It can look like whatever you'd like it to look like. This isn't an art class. I was an art teacher, but I'm not going to teach you this time. We're just having fun. And the reason I'm not going to say anything else prior is because I would like you all to join your breakout room. We're going to run this activity. And then I would like to hear your feedback on how it goes. But let me skip to the next slide. So before we split, everyone's going to get 2 minutes to do an elevator pitch or an elevator speech. So if you haven't heard that term before, what an elevator pitch or speech means is basically you get in an elevator with someone and you have that limited amount of time to convey to them whatever you want to convey to them before they're going to get out and go on their way. And your goal would be to then convince them of whatever you're trying to talk to them about, or at least have them understand it before they get out of the elevator. So that's where the term comes from. You're going to create a 2-minute elevator pitch or an elevator speech about your animal. In my mind, your goal would be to leave the people in your breakout room understanding this animal is important. This is why it's important to this person, and maybe here's some facts. That's all I'll say about that right now. I would appreciate it if everyone could time, or someone in the group could time each person, so that we're really trying to give this speech at just about 2 minutes. So this will be a challenge, and that's totally fine. And then we will see you in 10 minutes, and I'd love to hear how it goes. They are good to go into their breakout rooms. Welcome back, everyone. If you could, in the comments, leave some takeaways that you got from that exercise. What was it like to give an elevator pitch. What were the successes you felt? What were things that felt maybe you were more unsure about, or things that caught you off guard? Either side of it. Things you enjoyed, things that were difficult. It was a great icebreaker. I so was not prepared. And both of those things can be true. I'll give people another second to keep responding. But yeah, we will go over and talk more about specifically why we went over the elevator pitch. Would have liked more time to prepare. Exactly. I'm curious if people felt, because I know I was in a group, I think folks were surprised, or maybe potentially were surprised by how much time 2 minutes is. And I don't know what other folks had for their time estimate, but you can pack a lot of information into 2 minutes. And something that's kind of a nice skill to have in your back pocket is just being able to kind of fill 1 minute and fill 2 minutes and just feel comfortable with about how much time that is. Because like you're all saying, it can be a surprise, and you're not always going to know that's if somebody's going to come up to you and say, hey, you're involved with this organization, I would love to know more. And you want to keep it concise, and you want to make sure you're still putting in the information that's necessary. So being able to kind of recognize what that time frame feels like is a really good skill. So that's why I didn't want to preface it too much. I didn't want to give you too many thoughts ahead of time. And also, as an educator, I like people to come to their own conclusions. So thank you for doing that exercise. I learned some really awesome things about frogs and toucans, so I was thrilled. All right, so I'm going to do a little example, and then we can talk about it a little bit. I'm just going to get a sip of water, because I have a feeling that Jen thinks my favorite animals are cats, and she's not correct. So I'm going to teach everyone what my favorite animals are, and I've got my drawing ready for you all. So with that, hi, my name is Katie Hickman, and my favorite animal is the peregrine falcon. Here's a peregrine falcon right here. So I became really interested in ornithology and consecutively peregrine falcons in elementary school. I learned about Audubon in 2nd grade, and I also read the My Side of the Mountain and Frightful's Mountain series, which is an in-depth look at the life of a peregrine falcon. And Frightful the falcon, I just really connected with. I thought they are very amazing animals. They are the fastest creature at all. They outpace cheetahs. They outpace sailfish, which is the fastest creature in the ocean. And also something that not everybody knows, this is actually a picture of Manchester. You can see the Citizens Bank. I think that's a Brady Sullivan building in the background. We have in Manchester, New Hampshire, peregrine falcons, and there is a camera that you can go to and look at our native peregrine falcons. And I just really like to share with folks the fact that they're around us more than probably we realize or we acknowledge. I think, something that cities struggle with is obviously pest control. And peregrine falcons are naturally going to be hunting creatures that could become pests, could carry disease, or could pose a problem for us as a city. So in the future, what I would love to see is for Manchester as a city to be able to start implementing more hawk and falcon friendly architecture, as crazy as that sounds, because they do like nesting on flat surfaces overlooking tall heights. So that's easy enough to incorporate into architecture. They're not particularly pesky or invasive, and they provide a lot more benefit to our city and I think just our general culture by having these wonderful native hawks. So there we go. That also I don't think was 2 minutes, but I hope that gave you an understanding as to what an elevator speech could feel like. So I'm going to skip ahead to my next slide. And and then I will ask you about takeaways. Manchester does actually have peregrine falcons. That is real. There really is a camera. You can look it up after. Please don't look it up during the presentation, but after you can look it up and you can see the peregrine falcon cams and check them out. It matters to me to know that they're here. Obviously, in history, they were a very endangered species because of pesticides and DDT. So I think there was an effort to help replenish that population, and luckily it's working. And hopefully by me choosing to talk about this and share this information, I would hope that you now know this, and maybe you will go and tell someone, or perhaps like what happened when I was referencing me practicing my presentation, you could actually build a connection with somebody else off of this fun fact. So maybe in your group, you were sharing your favorite animals and you ended up having the same favorite animal as someone else. You never know in what conversations you're going to end up making that connection that helps you connect further with someone. And I will refer to that a few times as scaffolding, just kind of building off of prior information, which, as you know, in networking or communication in general, we're just understanding people, building those connections and setting the foundation for getting to know someone further is great, because that's going to allow you to further that connection. And if it's as simple as this is my favorite animal, then so be it. That's great. We love that. So thank you all so much. Okay, so before I give away, that's me with a book. Before I give away the answer to the parts of the story, if you think back to, you know, English class or writing reports and things like that, writing stories, what are the key parts of a story that need to be included when you're talking about literature or parts of a story? And you can feel free to put them in the comments, because sometimes these get written as in different ways. Intro, body, and conclusion. Yep. There are a couple ways, and I refer to them in two different ways, and neither is incorrect. Whatever helps you, beginning, middle, and end. Perfect. Introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, conclusion. If you remember that chart, there used to be charts in all my English classes with that exact depiction. That's great. Yeah. So you've got those different parts of a story and the details. That's also true. And later on, I'm actually going to end up utilizing who, what, and why. The two that I reference most often would be trying to connect it to high school literature. So exposition is just your general, the parts of your story. What is it? Which is what you said, who, what, where, when, why. The rising action, what's leading to your main point, which is the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. Whenever you're communicating with people, the goal should always be that there is a point to what you're saying and an end to what you're saying. I'm not saying that's always going to be the case, but if you think about when you're communicating with others and when you are having these conversations, you want to kind of keep that in mind, especially with, you know, you do your elevator pitch. You want there to be a clear ending to what you're talking about, so the person understands, okay, this was the information I was given, and I think this is what I'm going to take away from that information. For improv, I teach it a little differently, but it's still very similar to high school literature. And for me, I think of it both ways. So you can remember this process, whatever is easier for you. Setting the scene. So again, that's that who, what, where, when, why. Like what is happening? What are you talking about? Conflict. Again, not exactly the same crossover, but it's that main reason of why are you saying this? Here's the main bulk of what I'm trying to share. And then again, the resolution. Everything should have an ending or some kind of button or some kind of goal. It shouldn't just be a free-for-all of conversation, because for you who's trying to share information, that's going to dilute potentially what you're trying to tell someone. So we want to make sure that they're getting that information from you. Okay, so I want to talk about authenticity a little bit. I find it's extremely important when you're being truly authentic about what you're talking about, you're going to naturally come across as more interested because you are. You're going to have more energy about what you're talking about because you enjoy it. And it just is going to cut, people know, right? When you're being authentic or if you're being disingenuous, people are going to be able to tell if you're just telling them something that you've been told to say because that's your job and I'm here and I'm going to tell you about XYZ. They're going to be able to tell the difference. So what I find important is to always find a real reason in the information I'm sharing. I'm lucky in that, and this is kind of twofold because later on I'm going to talk about pursuing your interests and discussing them. But if it's something that is not as much of an interest to you, I think there's always some part of the information you're trying to share that you should be able to connect with in a certain way, even if it's just numbers. That's my example personally. Sharing data and statistics versus sharing stories and stories of impact to me are not the same thing. However, if I need to communicate, I work for the Boys and Girls Club. We serve X amount of kids. We work in X amount of towns. We impact X amount of communities. Even though listing information in that way is not the way I process information, it's not necessarily as engaging to me. It's still important to me because that's impactful, because what's hidden behind those words is the fact that that is how many children are being impacted. That is the work that I'm doing. This is why I think you should also be interested in what I do. Same thing with your organizations or your hobbies or your interests, the things that you're doing, no matter what part, what you're talking about. If you work in some of the organizations in the workshops today, a lot of us have been talking about regulations and background checks and fingerprinting. That's not the most engaging and exciting information to share with somebody else. But if you can explain, we do this process because it's vitally important, and here's the impact it can have, and here's how it's going to protect youth of New Hampshire. That's much more engaging, and you're going to grab somebody's attention a lot more easily that way than just coming at them and saying, hey, you're going to have to go get fingerprints. It's going to take a long time. It takes about a couple weeks. That's not interesting. And if you can connect that person to the information of why it's important and help them understand to care, it's going to make them more invested. It's going to make your day-to-day easier. The other part, which we've talked about a couple of times now, are visuals, because a lot of people are visual learners. And also when we're talking about social media, it does do better than just plain text. It's gonna, if you're just scrolling, it's going to catch people's eyes more, but also algorithmically, we've learned now, with Facebook especially, that posts with photos are going to end up being placed more in people's news feeds than posts without them. So I really, through this presentation, will try to hammer home that at any time possible, when you are sharing information, having an engaging, clear visual is going to help you really further what you're doing. And it also is a way to make it a lot more authentic. So we're going to move on to public speaking. I'm going to share a secret. It's so secret that I'm going to share it on a conference that's being recorded. I am not an extrovert at all. You can say in the comments if you are an introvert or an extrovert. And if you're an introvert, that's okay, because public speaking and performing and being able to communicate in front of others is a practiced skill. It is not something that Katie Hickman, was born with the clear understanding of how to do it. I have spent a lot of time through theater and performing and just really practicing, putting myself in situations where I have to talk to new people. I put myself in those situations so that I can do it. And it's a practiced skill because I like being able to teach. And in order to be able to teach, I need to know how to speak to others. And so I've learned. You also can do it. I promise you that. This photo is from the New Hampshire Theater Awards. a few years ago. And at the time, I was not as involved in the Hampshire theater community. And I, on a whim, decided I should apply to be the host of the show. I didn't know folks. I hadn't met them yet. I did 2 shows. And then beyond that, I mostly had done a lot of teaching. And I decided I'm going to go for it. The day of, I was terrified. I was like, I don't know what I've done to myself. This was not the goal for me. I should have picked something else. And now afterwards, like that was scaffolding for me to help me build my public speaking skills. And I've done a lot more since. And I'm seeing a lot of people agreeing and reiterating that, you know, you can be an introvert. You may feel like you're not per se a people person. You may feel like communicating and talking and being out and talking to others is not your strong suit, and that's okay. You may never feel like that's your strong suit. You may always feel like every time you're about to go into a presentation or do something in front of others, you may always get those nerves. And if you are able to practice and teach yourself, these will always come up, and I will get through it because I have practiced and I know what to do. You'll be good to go. And if I can teach you nothing else today, it's to trust the fact that if you practice, you can learn these skills and you can improve and you can do it. It's not just something that a few people in this world were born with how to do. So some different examples of ways you can improve these skills. There are more obvious ways, right? Theater classes, improv classes, dance and exercise, I'll talk about more in a second, but in New Hampshire especially, and if you're not in New Hampshire and you need help finding resources on public speaking or theater or improv classes, please let me know because I can find those for you. But in New Hampshire especially, we are graced with so many community theater organizations. You may not even know in your area how many organizations are here to teach you and welcome you, no matter what your skill level is, to help people improve these skills, not just out of the love of theater, but also because theater and improv and all these different type of performances help you as a person and help you especially as a professional. I've included dance and exercise and yoga and really any activity that's going to increase your body awareness, because when you're more comfortable and you can recognize your body and understand your body, it's going to make it easier for you to figure out and kind of have that muscle memory of how you're holding yourself, especially through dance classes. Perhaps you've taken an aerobics class at your local gym or a Zumba class. Yoga, you can follow along any exercise class through YouTube. It doesn't have to be in person, but anything where you are practicing holding your body a certain way, becoming aware of how you're holding yourself, that's going to help you in public speaking, because it's not just your body that has a muscle memory. Also speaking and feeling confident and comfortable is a learned muscle memory skill. So if you practice all of it, you will continue to get better on it. And I wish, and in the future, maybe we will spend an hour just talking about specifically all those skills. I really hope after this, you take some time and however you choose to, you find some time in your day, your week, or your year to expand on this through a class, through, my gosh, I mean, there's so many things across the state. And if you do want information on resources, there's lots of free opportunities. I know in Manchester, I just saw a post about a free salsa lesson, anything like that. You can find it wherever. So please do take advantage of that because it will help you and help you feel more comfortable in doing these types of presentations or communicating information. My biggest thing, and I sometimes am not positive if this is something that is said just in theater or said generally, the audience has no idea what information you're trying to share. And that's another part of that trusting your muscle memory and your practicing and your skill. They will have no idea if you slip up. If you're coming in and you're trying to share information on, let's just say, we'll say cats. You're trying to share information on cats and you misspeak and you really wanted to specifically say that there are long and short-haired cats. and you skipped over that. Or you said it twice. Nobody knows if that was or was not what you were supposed to say. The only way that they're going to know is if you show it. So if on your face you misspeak and then you're suddenly like, oh, you make that face. We all have that face when you do something goofy and you're like, oh, I didn't mean to say that. No one knows unless you make that face that that was an error, or you even feel like it was an error. So not giving that away is like your biggest trade secret. When you're sharing a story, whether it be for work, for communicating about your programming that you're in, when you're just talking to others, if you slip up, they have no idea. If you keep going, they're not even going to ever remember. So let's play a fun game for a quick second. Raise your hand if you've ever gotten nervous while ordering food at a restaurant. Yeah. Raise your hand if you've ever gotten the wrong order at a restaurant and just gone, nah, I'm not going to tell them. It's fine. I'm just going to eat this. It happens. Raise your hand if you've ever thought, oh, you know, like, I'm not outgoing. I could never do that kind of stuff that you do. I could never go do a show or do a thing. I'm not that kind of person. That is my favorite sentence, because people that know me in person know that I am not the most outgoing. It's not my strongest skill. And as someone who is more introverted, it's fully practiced. I'll repeat that over and over as many times as I can to try to convince you by the end of this that truly you are not alone. The amount of times that I have just been like, you know what? I don't need that food I wanted. I'll have something different today. That's fine. It's a lot of times, because that communicating is not always comfortable. I'm just looking at the comments. Yeah. Oh gosh, correcting names. Yeah. So Haley said, I'm the type of person that feels weird to correct someone that calls me the wrong name. Yes. And if someone had called me Caddy today, there's like a 50-50 chance if I would have corrected them, because at a certain point, I just can't. I don't want to go through the effort. I feel bad for them, because what if they feel a certain way about me correcting them? What if, you know, they have a certain reaction to me? What if they get angry that I told them my own name? We all go through that. And that's fine, because getting comfortable and practicing these skills, feeling confident, and really reminding yourself that we all go through this. It is not just like the 5 specific people in the world who are comfortable doing this. It is a practiced, rehearsed skill. It applies to your day-to-day life too. It's really not just communicating and sharing information. So now I will share something. It's embarrassing. I like to think that it's not. And probably, you know, there are going to be folks that will say, no, Katie, it's not embarrassing. Why would you say this? But I've gone to school for performing. I've performed for a good amount of my lifetime, well over 20 years now. And I have become aware that we all have go-to moves, things that our bodies do when we're nervous. So in high school, I started realizing there were a lot of photos of me just like this. And I didn't understand why I was constantly leaning over. And I realized that if I'm talking, when I was communicating with people, I was touching my earrings. So that was an easy fix. As soon as I learned I need to be able to communicate with others, and I need to not be fidgeting in the process. If I take my earrings out, there's no way for me to do that. So you can see we're in a presentation. There's no earrings. I have no jewelry on because I will fidget with it. Things like that are going to give away maybe you're feeling more nervous. You want to start enforcing those skills that are showing you're very confident. And I'm not going to make you stand up today because we're on Zoom, and I know you're all in your business wear pants, of course, and nobody's wearing sweatpants today, I'm sure. But I will stand up. I know if I put my hands on my back, I can't fidget as easily. I hope you can still hear me. I'm going to have to kind of lean forward and stand back. Yeah, my microphone doesn't always catch it. But if I stand tall, with my weight displaced on both my feet and my hands on my hips, I am not as likely to shift my balance as much. And that's important because it's distracting. And so now I'm going to show you a video from last year. And you have full permission to watch this video, and you can tell me how you think I'm doing, or what do you think at the time last year my go-to moves had manifested into. And I don't think the sound's going to share through, which is fine, because we don't need to hear the sound. It will play through my TV that's above me, so you'll hear the gist of it, I suppose. Okay, can you now see the YouTube screen? Okay, thank you. I'll turn it up so you guys can hear it a little bit. But you get the gist. It's a video of performing. I can already see what I'm doing that I don't enjoy. You can say in the comments. Gosh, that's enough of that. we can be set with that. Let me switch back to the PowerPoint real quickly. All right. Yeah. Is it called the chained elephant move? I never would have known that. Yeah, they're rocking back and forth. Because again, I have to keep my feet planted. Are you guys seeing my the PowerPoint again? Perfect, thank you. It is self-soothing, and that is something. Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. But yeah, so there's two go-to moves. And I realized that the more I was doing the national anthem, that actually comes from watching at UNH the hockey players during the anthem, because they are getting ready for the game, but they need to move their feet and stay busy and keep their bodies warmed up. So they shift back and forth. And I realized I subconsciously now also do that when I'm performing the national anthem. I shift back and forth because for years I watched other people do that, and it became muscle memory. Like, that's just what you do. The other thing, and it just is what it is, and that might be hereditary because my brother and I both do it when we are singing in front of others. We hold our hands like T-Rexes, and I don't know why. It's, again, you know, we can go into the psychological background of it. Is it probably because you're like retracting into yourself? Yes. Like somebody said in the chat, is it self-soothing to move? Yes, absolutely. And again, we're not going to discredit folks who do that because they require self-soothing. And I definitely don't want to discourage that. If you are someone who identifies as neurodivergent, and you have something that you do because, you know, that's just how your body is processing information or stimulation, that is a different thing. If that's something that your body needs to do, and if that's what you need to do in order to communicate, that is a fully different category. And folks should be comfortable if that's what they need to do. Myself, however, I don't identify in that way. And that is fully something I know to not do because a lot of the time I don't do it. So trying to catch yourself on those things is very important. I see that Canty in the chat said playing with your hair. And that's another big one too. I used to have a lot of like just photos of me just curling up like that. But capturing what you do when you're nervous so you can learn how to kind of curb it will help you portray that energy like we were talking about before. The audience doesn't know. They don't know if you're nervous. They have no idea. And maybe honestly, half the time, they're not going to know why you're swaying back and forth. Maybe you're just really vibing with the national anthem. But if you can kind of pause yourself and keep yourself from doing these things and learning these skills with your body to exude confidence, it's going to help you tell your story. So I'm going to share my favorite quote, and this was something I learned like about 10 years ago. The quote from Howard Thurman is, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive." And the reason that is really important to me, and I feel like it will resonate with a lot of folks here, is because when I was younger, I felt like I needed to be an advocate for everything under the sun. I felt very passionately about a lot of things because a lot of things are important in this world. And I went to a climate rally in Washington, D.C. And one of my friends said, I was like, I really care about this stuff, but it's just too much. Like, I can't be learning about education and working with children and all the stuff that comes with that, and being an advocate for kids and the community and the arts, and also climate and all these different factions of the world that I was interested in. I felt like I just wasn't doing enough anywhere. And my friend was the one who really said, just focus on what makes you come alive. So before, I had said, if you find an interest in what you're doing, and really take to heart what you're talking about, and you tell stories that mean something to you, it's going to come across. And that's why I think it's important, when you're working with volunteers, you're sharing information, you continue to find what parts of that really matter to you, because the more it matters to you, the more it's going to come across. And also, the more you interact with what really matters to you, the more you're going to start building your community and finding people who are interested in the same things as you. Renee asked, what about talking with your hands? That's also a thing people do. There are endless things that that somebody could do in the process. I mean, personally, depending on what level we're talking about of talking with your hands, I think it would also be really unsettling to see someone not talk with their hands at all. That would seem concerning if they just were completely stoic. So I talk with my hands a little bit. I'm energetic with my hands. There's a balance, and I think you all can recognize, if you watch yourself speak and if you watch yourself tell a story, you can see how certain things come off. If you talk with your hands and it comes off as you're passionate, that's great. If you're using your hands and it comes off like nobody's going to hear you because you're swatting flies, maybe you work on that, you pick that skill, and you learn how to keep your hands a little more calm. So I'm going to pivot a little bit into using what you love to tell a story. And I got to talk a lot faster now. So thinking about what makes you come alive and the interests you have, if you could grab a piece of paper, I would love for you all to take a second to just kind of list out the things that make you you. And I'll go ahead and say this ahead of time. This is going to be twofold, because there are a lot of facts that people know about me automatically, because of the information I choose to share, but also there might be information about you that you would like to share, that you would like to connect with people more on. And that's stuff that maybe you haven't considered, or maybe it would take some more thinking about, because it's not your go-to things. I have 3 examples about myself that I'll use in a second as an example, and I'll skip to my next slide. But just kind of thinking about the things that make you you, the things that you like, your different hobbies. You can keep writing. I'm going to skip ahead to the next slide. Katie likes to run. Katie's a performer. Katie has 2 cats. Those are kind of 3 primary things that if somebody asks about me or is talking about me, to me or to others, those are facts that people tend to draw on, which is completely fine. They are large parts of my day and my week, and I'm more than happy to talk about that information. I'm holding up now my own little interests. I have a lot of stuff that I feel like matters to me. And if I'm looking at all of these, and I hope that when you're done with this activity, you go back and look at all these different things. All of these things can be scaffolding to connect with someone or communicate with someone, and can be things that you can talk to somebody about and share information about, and then build off of it. Because you never know who online is going to connect with something you're saying. They're not just online, I'm sorry, but in general, especially online is what I meant to say. So you can continue to write. I'm going to move on to the next slide here because it's the same slide. I use my interests to connect to those around me because I'm passionate about them and they help me share information. So I do like to run. I have running photos from races and this and that and the other thing. And so in order to connect with my friends who are runners and also to have a story and a journey for people to engage with me on, in January, I did a 100-mile goal of running 100 miles to raise money for youth development. So that's a way that I connected to folks who like to run because they're following me on my running journey. They know what that's like and they're going to connect with that. That's a huge group of people that are my people in my community, are my running friends. But also people who are just following my journey and following along. This is telling them the story over time that I am doing this fundraiser. This is why it matters to me. I'm willing to run miles every day in order to hit this goal. And that's why I believe in it so much. I'm a performer. And just like you do, you all have your different interests and things and events that you're engaging in. You absolutely should utilize photos to share that information with people around you. As ridiculous as it is, as silly as a homemade unicorn costume to engage children during a pandemic and teach them to continue reading at home. If that helps you disseminate information and it helps people engage with what you're talking about, then that's great. If you're sharing something lighthearted and you want to engage with people in a lighthearted way, there's no wrong way to do that. Katie has 2 cats. I do have 2 cats, and I hear them getting up behind me now. I feel like that was a cue that we planned, and it's not. I held a virtual birthday party with them, which was largely for kids, again, during the pandemic. But the other part of that was I worked with a lot of local businesses during the pandemic who were interested in connecting with kids and encouraging them that if they read a book, I don't remember the formatting we did exactly, but if they participated in this virtual cat birthday party, we would have these different prizes to give out. So a bunch of different folks who make cat items, cat decorated items for cats from Manchester and the Manchester area, all donated them. And then I was able to send them out across the United States to kids because that was how we connected, was through a cat birthday party. And people talked about that for a long time. And later on, as I'm doing farmers markets and other events, those same vendors that worked with me for a cat birthday party, the more I say it, it still sounds just as strange, but you build the scaffolding and it continues to grow. Your cats are jealous of the cat birthday party. You can have a cat birthday party as well, Jen, and you can connect with people and you can share your story. I'm looking at what Haley said. Throwing Facebook question the other day that asked if you were an action figure, what would your 2 accessories be? That's a great point. And that connects back to like what makes up you and what are your interests and what do you want people to know about you. So moving right along, we're going to now actually build an elevator speech. So looking at your little your interest board with your little stick figure self, I'd love for you to pick something on there. And you can go ahead and write it out because we might just be out of time to be able to share this in person, but I do hope that you choose to, or you find a way to connect to somebody and share your elevator pitch at some point. But pick your interest. Again, you can kind of start with who you are, decide what the interest is and why it matters, just like we did with the animals, right? You're like, who are you? My name is Katie. I really love peregrine falcons. Here's why I care about them. And this is why I would love for you to care about them. Giving people a way to engage in your information and in your story is a great way to continue building that relationship. So I'm going to give you all a second just to kind of think about that before we continue. You also, I would love for folks, if you're done, you can also just share it right into the chat if you would like, if you'd rather just type it out rather than write it. Because I would love to hear what your interests are, and I'd love to be persuaded to also have that common interest with you. So we're running low on time. I'm going to move onto my next slide just because there's another activity, but really feel free to share if you'd like to. And I would love for folks to share their elevator pitches in the comments. I'm going to move on to the next thing because it's another smaller activity that you might not have time to follow up on today, but has been instrumental in helping me recognize who, where, and who I identify as my communities around me. So I'm going to move ahead. The last part of this, because we have said throughout this workshop, we're using storytelling to engage our different communities. It took a different presentation a little while ago for me to really understand that communities and the groups that you engage with are all your different communities. So I listed some different examples, right? You might have a neighborhood where you're very connected. You might have an apartment building where you're all very connected and you share common interests. You may have your current job or your former job and former coworkers that you still connect with, where you have similar interests. Maybe you're still working in the same fields, different activities, clubs, organizations that you're a part of. A religious community that you may be a part of, if you're in different hobby groups, and even just friend groups. So I don't want to rush everyone. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. At some point, even if you just write this down and you follow up with it on your own time, I would love for you to write it out, because what you'll learn, and I'm trying to just flip to my own, there it is. What you'll learn by doing this activity is, even if you just follow what's on the screen right now, you can break that down even further, and you might not realize the impact that your stories and the information that you're sharing can really have. Because if I was to look, and I put Volunteer New Hampshire as one of my communities because they're my newest community. It's wonderful. I'm going to use my easy example, which is theater at the bottom. There's me with all my hair, and I've got my theater community. But I know when I'm saying theater community, there are so many organizations that even if I'm just thinking my Manchester theater organizations, there are 4 of them. And from there, I could list specific people. So maybe I want to share information, again, about an important community event. We're all working in our communities. We're all doing awesome things. Maybe there's a local event coming up and I want to get people involved. Maybe it's an event where theater folks could participate in some way. I want to reach out. I can use this method of really determining what are my different groups. Are there subgroups within those groups? In the case of family, you know, I grew up with my mom and dad in separate households. That's 2 separate branches of family. So lots of people could have different branches within their family, within their work. There could be all different kinds of groups within your community that you may not even be thinking about networking and communicating with. I'm really loving everyone's different elevator speeches. And I encourage everyone to take a second before we wrap up to take a peek at all of these, because the most important thing, move on really fast. All these different groups of people are going to be interested in and engage information in different ways. So you don't always know who's going to find a connection to the information you're sharing. And also they might enjoy information in different ways, right? You may have a group of people, and I'll use the theater community as another example. If I know and I'm aware that this group of people that I want to tell about a show, they're interested in shows, they're also in shows. So assuming they're going to see something online is not a great assumption, because they're also busy and they also have other projects. So I need to think about, how do I want folks to know about projects that I'm working on? If I'm auditioning for something and I want people to audition, I'm going to probably reach out to them specifically and talk to them about it and say, hey, I'm auditioning for this show. I think you should join me with this show. I think these are the benefits. What do you think? That's my highly specific example, but I hope you can start thinking about what different ways can you engage with people, right? We know that people of different demographics are going to use different social media, maybe not use social media. Maybe your organization is still sharing information through mailers, through emails, through social media, through events and word of mouth, or physical in-person activities. There's so many different ways to communicate information, but understanding who you're talking to and what specific people you're trying to share information to is the last part of all this. Because when we say, building community, that can mean so many different things. We here as one group coming together to learn about engaging folks around us, we are our own community now. We can all talk to each other about our interests. We already learned our favorite animals. We're now all very close. So finally, just to kind of go over everything, and thank you all so much for participating and going over everything. Public speaking is a skill that can be learned. If I can instill anything in you today, this is a learned thing. You're not born with it. Everyone can do it. We just have to find the ways how and to continue to practice. And I hope you look into that. And if you want more information on the next slide, I will give you some ways to contact me. Telling stories is simple. It's the same parts as you learned as when you were a kid. Nothing has changed. You always want to go into it with specific points that you're trying to share. Your stories and your interests can connect you to others. You never know what part of your story they're going to connect you to. But if it is as simple as, I'm Katie and I have 2 cats, and that's how people connect with me and they find an interest and a common ground with me, great. However you build those connections with your community, wonderful. You want to be catering your stories to your communities, thinking about how are your demographics receiving information? Are they reading emails? Do they get emails? Are they using social media? Have they pivoted from Facebook to TikTok because they are now in their young 20s and no longer use Facebook and are moving away to newer platforms? How do you then, as an organization or an individual, share your story? We all have these skills. The audience will never know if you make a mistake. We love a visual. Please always use visuals. And most of all, I really hope that you all continue following your passions and sharing the things that would make you come alive. So thank you so much. I had a blast. This was great. I will stay on an extra second. I hope that's okay. I hope we don't have to close the chat right away. I do want to be respectful if people need to leave. But yeah, here we go. I do have a LinkedIn. My professional Facebook is the way to contact me, as well as my email is the other best method. I hope you took away some skills. If you would like further information on how to expand on anything we talked about, please let me know. You can come hang out with Queen City Improv. We do open sessions every month. And if you would like to come join us, let's see, we still have one this month in May. If you want to come to Manchester and learn some free skills about utilizing your body and talking in front of others and having fun, or if you want to learn in some other settings, please let me know, because this is what I love to do.